Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I'm going to go over some routing numbers today, or actually what the routing number system is about anyway. We're going to go over some links, and of course the links are already in the description box, so you can follow along if you want. The first one will be, of course, the first link. They're all in order and the way I'm going to go through them, so you can follow right along with those. First one is in regards to finding your routing number and what a routing number is. This is directly from U.S. Bank, and it says, what is a routing number? A routing number is a 9-digit code used by financial institutions to identify other financial institutions. It's also known as an RTN, routing transit number, and an ABA, American Bankers Association, routing number. Combined with your account number, it allows institutions to locate your individual account. We go down, and it talks about the mobile and online banking, U.S. Bank Visa debit card. And what I want to do here is read out the bank Visa debit card. Debit cards are different than credit cards. Okay. Debit card is a perfect way to pay for those little everyday purchases. Keep track of your transactions and rest easy knowing you have zero fraud liability. This is why I use a debit card. There's zero fraud liability. Basically, it's placing a whole harmless indemnification agreement right in with the card, though those are inherently involved in any contract under equal consideration, equal benefit. It is actually a part of the mechanism of the operation of law. So just so you know, a debit card is different than a credit card for that basic reason. You hold no fraud liability. Going on to the next one is an Investopedia link talking about routing transit number and its basic definition, again, referring to that financial institution. A routing transit number is a 9-digit number used to identify a bank or financial institution when clearing funds for electronic transfers or processing checks in the United States. When we go to the doctor and we give them that number along with the name and address, they use that number to clear themselves, but it leaves the liability on you. It never gets fully transferred. A routing transit number is also used in online banking and clearinghouses for financial transactions. Only federally chartered and state chartered banks that are eligible to maintain an account at the Federal Reserve are issued routing transit numbers. Okay. Part of the issue is that when you apply for Social Security, that is a financial institution. It is the main account that you deal with. It is a minor account at the state level that is connected to the primary account. Okay. That is a clearinghouse. The account number they give you is 11 digit or 11 characters. It's got 2 hyphens in there. But what happens is when you use that name and address on the other side of the ledger, the treasurer on the other side of the ledger doing the accounting uses that name and address as an access point for the Social Security number. That Social Security number, if you take the hyphens out, it becomes that 9-digit transit number, routing transit number. It is, in fact, a financial number. And when they use that, it's called an obligor number. They've taken away the Social Security beneficial aspect of the two hyphens, put it all together as a 9-digit transit routing number. That's an unlawful conversion, folks. If you didn't know that, and they did it without you knowing, and you never gave them the original source of the conversion, then they converted it without your knowing, and that is fraud. Plain and simple. If they're using that financial information against you without your knowledge, that is in fact fraud. Now, whether they did it intentionally or not makes no difference. It becomes fraud on the record, period. Then we go to the next link, and this is from valuepenguin.com, and it's just it's by Lending Tree, I guess. And it says, what is a bank routing number and where is it found? And it's got some information. It goes again, used to identify a financial institution in the United States. It's got a thing down here that says, what's the difference between ABA and ACH routing numbers, automated clearinghouse? So we click on that. It says, technically speaking, ABA routing numbers apply to paper checks, while ACH routing numbers apply to electronic transfers and withdrawals. None of this says anything about deposits. Remember that. It says the ABA routing numbers apply to paper checks, while ACH routing numbers apply to electronic transfers. So what's happening is, in the course of business at the courthouse, they're taking the electronic or the definitive paper documents, and they're in check form. They've got all the elements needed for a check, and they convert them to an ACH transfer. Anybody believes I'm telling a lie, you bring it right out and prove that I'm not. Most major banks today use the same routing number for both. However, it's not uncommon to see separate ABA and ACH routing numbers for regional lending institutions. ABA routing numbers are sometimes referred to as check routing numbers, and ACH routing numbers as the electronic routing number or number for electronic transfers. See, they want to stay away from that routing transit number. They don't want you to know that there is a connection between routing numbers and freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. If only one number is cited, it's likely that the ABA and ACH routing numbers are the same, but it doesn't hurt to contact your bank to make sure. So there's a distinct difference between the numbers according to what's on paper and what's in the electronic system. And again, I assure you, if you're not familiar with that electronic system, it's time to start getting used to it, because that's where all the routing gets transited in today's modern terms. Before you get it down on the paper, most people write it up on an electronic device and then print it out from that electronic device. The electronic device remains with its electronic routing. Okay? So let's go on to the ABA.com routing number policy and procedures. American Bankers Association routing number policy and procedures says the routing number devised by the American Bankers Association in 1910 and adopted. Again, there's that word adopted. It is not law. It is not regulation. It is not mandatory. It is adopted by the industry in 1911, serves to identify the specific financial institution which is responsible for payment of a negotiable instrument. Today's negotiable instrument is what they call legal tender. Legal tender is a legal bid tender meaning bid. So today's legal bids are done through negotiable instruments. If you don't want to bid, then you shouldn't be writing negotiable instruments. In June 1985, the Routing Number Administrative Board was created to administer the policy and procedures associated with routing numbers. The board reports to the ABA Executive Committee. Over the years, both the purpose and structure of the routing number have changed. Accommodating. There's that commercial term, accommodating. See, I'm not the accommodation party, and I'm not the accommodating party. Such things as the Federal Reserve System, the advent of the MICR, Electronic Funds Transfer, implementation of the Expedited Funds Availability Act, interstate banking, and the use of routing numbers for provision of cash management services. Interstate banking is what all of it is. You do not bank with your domestic family. If I had a family member and they needed $50, hey, here's $50. Whether he gets it back to me or not, I don't care. See, it's only when we deal with foreigners and we have this issue of trust on whether that foreigner is really going to pay us back or if he's just trying to dupe us and steal from us. So that if you fool me once, hey, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Start learning how to take care of your own banking procedures firsthand and quit handing them over to everybody else to route them and transit them for you. That's the problem. And the use of the routing number for provision of cash management services. Now, all of a sudden, we use that electronic routing number for a cash man. As I said before, they're taking the definitive paper check and converting it to electronic form. You have the ability to do the opposite and take the electronic cash or electronic deposit and convert it to a cash, physical, real cash deposit. I can go to any ATM and draw out cash with an electronic number. And that removes all numbers except for the number on the cash. Being legal tender, of course. In 1973, a joint task force of the American Bankers Association and the Federal Reserve System formed to formally define the purpose of the routing number, the eligibility criteria for obtaining a routing number, and to develop a logical approach as to how many numbers a bank could and should have. The work of this task force culminated in the publication in 1976 of a policy statement and a set of guidelines for assigning and administrating routing numbers prior to the publication of this current policy. The most recent policy was last revived in 2016. So as we see, it's just a joint task force between American Bankers Association and the Federal Reserve System. That's all it is. Routing number policy is approved by both the Routing Number Administrative Board and the ABA Executive Committee. Membership of the Routing Number Administrative Board is comprised of representatives from the following organizations. And then it goes down and it says American Bankers Association, National Automated Clearinghouse Association, Credit Union National Association, the Clearinghouse, EPCOR, and Viewpoint LLC. Yeah, Viewpoint LLC. What's your viewpoint? Associate members are ECHO, Federal Reserve Bank, and Official Registrar of Routing Numbers. Currently, LexisNexis Risk Solutions. As I've been saying all along, it is a big insurance scam. And as you now clearly comprehend, I hope that LexisNexis is an insurance company. Data Element Insurance Company. As we go down, it talks about the electronic transactions, and there's a regular routing numbers and then electronic transaction identifiers. Okay, electronic transaction identifiers, and this is what I'm talking about with the hybrid routing that I've established on my own website. It's a private routing, okay? All I have left to do is get them to comprehend that my origin source now starts from my private routing point of origin. It doesn't start within their system somewhere else and then sit there and echo back and forth in those walls while everybody else is claiming that I'm liable for it. That's an impossibility. I can't be liable. I've explained this before. You cannot possibly be liable on the instrument for the person named in the instrument unless you are forging the signature. If it is in fact your signature, then their law states that you are not liable on the instrument for the person named in the instrument. This is a clear separation. Okay. Electronic transfer identifiers are special purpose numbers designated for use as electronic addresses of organizations, which are not banks, but process payment transactions on behalf of banks. Again, so we have address. We've now converted a physical paper address to an electronic address. Okay? So comprehend, I am correct. And if anybody can rebut this and prove that I am wrong, please do so. I am not a narcissist. I am willing to correct anything I do wrong. Been doing it all my life. So please, if anybody feels that I am wrong on this, please show evidence that I am. Because it's by the use of the address that you are presumed that you are a financial institution, a bank, allowing the process of the payment transactions on behalf of the banks. If you're the beneficiary, then you shouldn't have anything to do with it, except accepting the benefit. That's it. Assignment of an ETI allows these organizations, and there's that other word, as I said, electronic addresses of organizations. We, as the Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union, are not organized. We've discussed this several times now. And that's what their whole program is about, is being organized. In order to prove that you are organized, you have to fulfill their documentation of their organization. Otherwise, you are not organized according to them. That's that accord and satisfaction, the accommodation and accommodating parties. You are neither accommodating or the accommodation party to them. You're just a mere private foundation. And whether they want to call you in the development stages or whether you're organized or not is none of their business, because you're still just a private foundation. And whether you organize like them or in a different way is none of their business. They have no right to come and check and make sure that you organize the way they organize under a political body, a military body, a religious body, not a spiritual body, a religious religion. You don't have to have those. You can have plenipotentiary powers and be able to dismiss any polity, dismiss any banking institutions, dismiss any bicameral or bipartisan views by bringing them all under the same full armor of God that they were created in. And if they want to recognize that, then you got a good agreement, I think. But if they dismiss any of it, then it should give you a warning flag. It should give you a warning flag that maybe they don't know. Not that they're committing fraud or they're being heinous, but maybe they don't know, and they should continue to try to educate further. Now, if they start becoming belligerent and violent, that's when you might want to back off, because again, I come in peace, I am in peace, I will pass in peace. If things start getting violent, I'm going to pass along. I'm going to let somebody else deal with you. I deal with things of peace. Assignment of an ETI. Assignment is a trust capacity. An assignment is from somebody else that assigns a number to you so you can operate in their system. Okay? It's an assignment, a grantee, a supposed grantee. There can't be an actual grantee in this system. It's all fiction, so the grantee is a fiction. The trustee is a fiction. Everything is a legal fiction. It's a presumption, and therefore the assignment is a fiction. Assignment as they determine as a trust assignment of an ETI, allows these organizations to receive or transmit electronic files, hand over, turn over. You're operating just like an attorney. That is the basic definition of an attorney, one who turns over. And by God, if you're turning over the books of the page, then that's what you're the attorney of. You're the trustee of the content that you're turning over. If you're using scripture, that's a good trustee. I believe turning the pages of the scripture would be a good trust position. Those are the data elements we should be expressing. Assignment of an ETI allows these organizations to receive or transmit electronic files consisting of one or more payment transaction messages. Payment transaction messages. That's a note. It's a promissory note in electronic form. That's all it is. On behalf of the financial institution for which the processing service is being provided. So if you're the one making these electronic transfers, and you're doing them on behalf of the financial institution for which the processing service is being provided, then you are the service of process. That's why you get those notifications in the mail for summons to court. You are acting as the service processor. You have to figure out the routing on the addresses. I'm telling you, that is the key. None of them lead to the kingdom of heaven. They're all routing you the wrong way. An ETI does not identify the bank obligated to settle for the transaction and cannot be used to identify a party to be debited or credited in a financial transaction. It's not an identifier of the party. It is an identifier of the transaction. Again, it's the transaction that is not correct. ETIs may not appear on checks or drafts. They only appear in the electronic form. And that's what tells us if they take that electronic paperwork and they enter it into an electronic format, they've changed the number. Just like we read in the Social Security thing, where when you apply for Social Security, actually what happens is they change the number to fit the format of the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And you now become a partner providing service of granting the data elements needed for the transactions. Assignment of ETI is subject to confirmation by a Federal Reserve Bank that it has agreed to receive a transmit payment transaction to the applicant organization based on the use of an ETI, and that the applicant has been designated by one or more banks as its processor. Eligible organizations include non-bank subsidiaries of banks or bank holding companies. Subsidiaries. They are subsidized already. They must be subsidized as non-bank subsidiaries. In other words, they have to have federal grants, federal funding. These are federal branches and agencies under 12 USC 6201, establishment of federal branches and agencies by foreign bank. All those branches and agencies are established by a foreign bank, whereas the executive department and military departments are the ones that give all of those grants. Clearinghouses and independent non-bank affiliated processors. Now, because it's a military monopoly, it is not a banking monopoly. It is a military monopoly, okay? And because it's a military monopoly, there's a thing known as a doctrine of necessity, that in order for us to be able to communicate and participate with our fellow man who is a volunteer prisoner of war, but in our peaceful setting, we still have this need to be able to interact with everybody. And there's also that need to use that military script for that interaction. So there's a doctrine of necessity that we can use to provide a venue or a route, a hybrid route, as I've discussed. It's just a matter of educating people on how to do that. Okay. Let's go on to the next one, which is the Federal Reserve Account Management Guide. And under this, we see Federal Reserve account structure, terminology, opening and closing account relationships. This is a very important part, relationships. When you see those documents from the court, got all you people that are paying child support and going through family court with custody issues and stuff, and you see that term on that document, it says respondent. That's a financial instrument, and they're calling you a respondent according to the Federal Reserve Accounting Guide. Correspondents and respondents, people that communicate with them in or on behalf of the banking institution as a process server. Then it talks about use of secondary RTNs, routing transit numbers. And then it talks about establishing a correspondent-respondent relationship, and then a pass-through relationships. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about those pass-through relationships. It's just supposed to pass through us. We're not supposed to be the liable party that they're holding us out to be. We are a pass-through. It is not us that's liable. It is not the Federal Reserve lady at the teller window that's responsible or obligated or liable. It is not the court clerk that's liable or responsible. What is responsible and liable is the record. The record must reflect accurately. Once that notice is given, and then people start dismissing it as if though that doesn't count, then they become liable for knowingly and intentionally placing falsity on the record. That's how the liability comes about. If they are willing to learn and be educated to correct the record, and they go along with it, and this is a large part of your own part of educating them and doing so peacefully. And this is why I quit entering documents, because I saw myself going down the same road where if I didn't quit, I was going to end up behind bars, and I was going to end up there for a long time. I had to come to peace with myself first and say, okay, let's forgive everybody and start all over. It took me a while to come about that, but that's where I'm at. You can't press charges against people when you know, in fact, it's not them, it's the record, and you are part of that culpability of that record. You're the one that's been giving the address all of these years. You have to accept that, okay, you did make a mistake. Now, granted, nobody taught you about this. But now that you know, you now have a duty to step back and start fixing this, folks. Quit sitting on that couch and not doing anything about it. Now you are culpable. There are people like myself that are teaching you this. You can't just sit there and dismiss it and say, well, that's not true. I'm giving you sources, and you need to do your research so you can confirm it for yourself, because I am not a babbling idiot. And neither are they. So let's look at this stuff. Let's go down here. And under opening and closing account relationships, well, let's start out with terminology, because it's just one sentence paragraph. Definitions of the following basic terminology associated with the account structure of the Federal Reserve banks is master account, secondary RTNs, correspondent, and respondent. Those are the relationships. You have a master account and secondary RTNs, which is correlative to the correspondent and respondent, are found in the OC1. Familiarization with these terms will assist a financial institution in opening and maintaining its account relationship with the Federal Reserve banks. In order to establish a master account with the Federal Reserve Bank, that master account is a Social Security account that you opened up at the age of 18 and fill out the SS5. Unless the financial institution is a U.S. branch or agency of a foreign bank, and it is a branch or agency of the foreign bank, like I said, 12 U.S.C. 6201, establishment of federal branches and agencies by a foreign bank. That Social Security office was established by a foreign bank, and it is an extension of an account. It is a financial institution with a master account, and they are the correspondent. You, by using the name and address under that SS5, become the respondent. The board of directors of a financial institution must pass resolutions that authorize certain individuals to conduct business on behalf of the financial institution. That's what the SS5 did. It allowed you, as in the authorized representative, to conduct financial transactions on behalf of the Social Security. And then as soon as you did that, you turned around and opened a bank account. And again, nobody was taught this stuff. You open that bank account, you used a name and address. Now you've placed yourself as a respondent trustee, taking care of them in the capacity of a public office. We've all been duped. All of us have been duped. By opening or maintaining a master account, a financial institution agrees to be bound by all the provisions as amended from time to time of OC1. You're not the one that opened that master account. That master account was opened, and then you had an account filed or registered or lodged, applied to that master account using a individual number and name. The name and number identify the individual's record, not the individual. The financial institution must provide the Federal Reserve with a certified copy of the board resolutions as well as an official authorization list which identifies authorized individuals. Again, that Social Security card tells you you're an authorized representative. Look at the bank. When you went and opened that bank account, look at that paper check. That signature line is not a line, it's microprint, and it says authorized signature. By opening or maintaining a master account, a U.S. branch or agency of foreign bank must execute the foreign banking institution account agreement. If you don't have that agreement, then they're not talking about you. That's the agreement the Social Security has. And it says to open a master account at a reserve bank, a financial institution must also obtain a valid 9-digit RTN issued by the ABA registrar of routing numbers. When you went down to a local bank, did you open an account at a reserve bank? Is that using reserve currency or is that using national currency? There's two distinct differences. See, the reserve currency is based on reserves, assets. We go down, it says use of secondary RTNs. An account holder may use secondary RTNs, and that's what you've got. You've got a secondary RTN, routing transit number with 2 hyphens in it that you're allowed to use as a benefactor to place data elements on the beneficiary's record and not liabilities as a trustee. Whereas if you're using a name and address and they convert it, they're presuming that you're operating as the trustee and you're placing a liability on the record. And that's a problem. It's all false. The record itself is false. How could it be true if it's a legal fiction based on presumptions until somebody rebuts it? And if they don't rebut it by taking it out of the legal presumption side and placing it on the supplemental truth side, then it remains illegal. It remains a legal entity. It remains presumed. You've got to get rid of the presumption. And the only way to deface that presumption is take away the facilitation of it. Graven images. Let's look at the next one. Federal Reserve Account Structure Transaction Settlement and Reporting Guide. Account relationships. The Federal Reserve banks generally maintain no more than one debtor-creditor relationship with a financial institution. That one creditor-debtor relationship is with the U.S. Social Security Administration in New York, Manhattan. And we'll talk about that sometime too. In case you guys didn't know, Manhattan and what they call New York City, that little tip. It used to be a Dutch, pre-colonial Dutch settlement. If you guys are familiar with the East Indies of Washington, D.C., that's a trading corporation. Guess what's happening in this new reset? We've been dealing with the East Indies Dutch company, trading company through Washington, D.C. Well, it was first established pre-colonial before it was established in the Declaration of Independence and all them founding documents. It was establishing itself in what we now know today as Manhattan in England. And it actually had a wall. That's what Wall Street is today. There is a physical wall to keep England out of the Dutch trading post. Well, then England finally broke through and said, okay, we're taking over. And that was the establishment of Washington, D.C. as the East Indies Trading Company, because the Englanders had taken over the northern post in New York area. Well, the reset, I'll bet we have a new capital here pretty soon. Yeah, New York, the place of the UN, the new capital of the world. Anyway, under this single account structure, an account holder may only maintain a single master account with its ARB unless a specific exception applies as described in OC 1.3. We go down and look at OC 3.1.3. It says section 2.3 of the OC 1 identifies the following exceptions to the general rule that a financial institution may have only one master account. The financial institution may retain for a transitional period, transient, transition. That's what development stages are. They are a transition. Period not to exceed 12 months. The master account of an acquired, failed financial institution or non-surviving financial institution with which it has merged or consolidated. See, when you apply through that SS5, you're applying as an outside salesman, not one that has been in an establishment and has now failed and now needs to be bankrupt so it can get a fresh start and a merger. See, that's what they're preventing you from. They're preventing you from realizing there's a bankruptcy already in play and you don't have to play their monopoly game. Okay? The ARB may restrict the use of such an account as it deems necessary or appropriate and may require that the financial institution execute a security agreement covering multiple master accounts. That's the only reason you need a security agreement, is if you're holding multiple accounts. It's the only reason. A U.S. branch or agency of a foreign bank, an edge corporation, or an agreement corporation. An agreement corporation. Where do you hear that? May maintain a single master account, or it may maintain a master account for each group of offices located in the same state and the same Federal Reserve district. Okay? So we're learning that they're all according to Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve has zero authority, folks. Zero authority. Now let's get on to the last one, which is the SR 20-23 Interagency Order, granting an exemption from customer identification program requirements. Now let me explain to you folks, like I said the other day, under 19 USC 81O, you're using that name and address as if though you're a federal, state, or municipal official or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. That's not so. It's just not so. You are not a customer. You are not a customs agent and customs officer. Neither one, not a customs agent or an officer. You have no such valid contract. And you are not using that address as a principal place of business, as a customs officer or agent holding property for import and export purposes by operating as a transmitting utility for those imports and exports for the United States Customs Office. You are not a customer. You're not the one that is actually supposed to be customizing the order. The order is already in place, and it's a protection order. And you are customizing it and causing liability by not comprehending this. Under this interagency agreement, it says, to the officer in charge of supervision at each Federal Reserve Bank, interagency order granting an exemption from customer identification program requirements for loans extended by banks and their subsidiaries to all customers to facilitate purchases of property and casualty insurance policies. The Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the National Credit Union Administration, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, collectively the federal banking agencies, FBAs, and the U.S. Department of Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, hereinafter the agencies, again, establishment of federal branches and agencies by a foreign bank, and the U.S. are issuing the attached interagency order to grant an exemption from the requirements of the Customer Identification Program rule for loans extended by banks and their subsidiaries to customers to facilitate purchases of property and casualty insurance policies, hereinafter referred to as premium finance loans. Comprehend, without your data elements, they don't have data elements to loan. You are the ones that are financing the loan through the data elements. That is how loans get financed. They loan you a piece of paper, and in exchange, you loan them data elements. In that exchange, you are loaning them the wrong data elements and placing yourself in liability. That's all it is. Effective immediately, a banking organization that provides loans to customers to facilitate purchases of property and casualty insurance policies can utilize this CIP exemption and should update its CIP policies and procedures accordingly. On September 28, 2018, the agencies issued an interagency order granting an exemption from the requirements of the CIP rule for premium finance loans extended by banks and their subsidiaries to commercial customers, not private foundations. Private foundations have the exemption already. Again, because there's already a protection order out. You cannot require information that has not been communicated and is not part of your organization. No such data elements exist. The CIP rule set forth in Section 326 of the USA Patriot Act. This is dealing with trading with the enemy. You have to prove that I am required for that safety reason. You have to prove that I'm required to give you a provide or set up a routing a electronic routing number or a physical routing number according to your regulations to prevent yourself from trading with an enemy. Well, if I'm already known not to be an enemy, then you don't need that number. And that itself proves that you are supposed to be working with us. See, the protection already exists, folks. It's called the Ultimate Naval Treaty, Treaty of Berne, and the Law of Nations, which we are not subject to because we are not organized. But we can recognize, and see, this is one of the things about people go around calling people like myself sovereign citizens, saying, well, you don't recognize it. I recognize it very well. I recognize the government and how it's structured and how it operates very well. And I'm in alignment with it. In fact, I agree with what they do. What I don't agree with is how the people that assert such idiocy don't comprehend it themselves. And one day, running across people like myself, they will find themselves liable for refusing to comprehend what us, quote, sovereign citizens are putting out. See, I don't disagree with the way it's set up. What I disagree with is the public education that refuses to educate the people going through that system on how it actually works and why we are taught at 5 years of age to learn how to write our name in cursive and put it with a name and address. We're taught to remember our phone number. That's an international security number. We're taught to remember the address. That's an international security number. We're taught that at age 18, we need to go get an SS5, and that is a national security number as a sub RTN, a secondary RTN. When we have the capability of establishing a private hybrid RTN to eliminate all of the what's called hawalators, that's trustees along that pathway, whether it be a commercial paper pathway or a commercial electronic pathway. There's all these people reaching in and grabbing those data outlets everywhere they can because it's an open source. And you need to learn how to close the source. That's it, pure and simple. Anyway, I've been on long enough. I don't want to make these videos more than an hour. Like I said, the links are all in the description box. Please hit the share. Please hit the like. Please mash that PayPal button and share some love, because I'm going to keep doing this, but that's what I depend upon. It is a matter of necessity for me. I do not have a bank account. I only have banking instruments. And at the time, though it's still not completely set up as a private routing, I am working on that. And this is why I do what I do. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be doing these videos. I'd just be learning this on my own and doing it myself. In the meantime, like I said before, it's like giving a man a fish. You feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But to extend upon that, it's not a matter of just teaching another man how to fish. You have to teach that man how to fish well enough so that he can continue to teach others how to fish. So think about this. And again, hit that share button, hit the like button, and mash the PayPal button and share some love. Share all of this content. Share all of the links. And get to my Facebook page, get to my other forums, get to my WordWise Warrior site. Learn and educate yourself outside of what they've indoctrinated you in the public education system. Because I guarantee you they have not taught you anything that is pertinent to being able to administrate properly your plenipotentiary powers of self-governance and self-choice. They've indoctrinated you into believing that there's only these choices, and that's false. You are a creator. You create your own choices. You can hybridize things. So please Think about this stuff. And again, folks, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. God bless. Have a great day.